Hey guys, so today I'm starting my vlog for November. I'm planning on, right now at least, having this go throughout the whole month, but we'll just kind of see how good I am at updating it. If I'm able to keep up with updates and do really well with it, I may divide it into two, but we're just going to start off by saying it's a monthly reading vlog, and it is going to be themed. So I mentioned in my pile of possibilities for November that I had kind of a theme plan for a vlog that I wanted to do, and that's what most of the books I talked about in that were for. And that idea came from, a lot of people have done similar things where a lot of people have done, I'm going to read like this booktuber and see how that goes. And I've wanted to do something like that, and I think I may do more focused videos in the future focused on that. But I think right now there's just too many books on my shelves that have been recommended by various booktubers, so I decided to do just kind of a booktube made me do it sort of vlog where I just read a bunch of books based on booktuber recommendations that I actively sought out after a specific booktuber recommended it to me. So what my plan is I'm going to randomize this choice. I have the list of books that I mentioned in my pile of possibilities plus a few others, and I'll basically just draw the name of a channel and read a book based on some things that they've said that inspired me to get that book. This first one I actually just picked because I was in the mood for it, and honestly it's one that I know people on BookTube inspired me to get it, but I don't actually remember specifically who, so it's kind of a softer starting point for this vlog. But that is Lovely War by Julie Berry. This is following two romances that occurred during World War I in tandem with each other, but the story is being told from the perspective of Aphrodite, goddess of love within Greek mythology, as well as Ares, Hades, and Apollo also are playing roles. I think Hephaestus does a little bit too, and they're existing during World War II. Like, they're looking back on these stories from the perspective of being in World War II, and so I don't know exactly what that's going to add to the story, but I'm assuming it's going to add something. I am over halfway through it, so I definitely think I'm going to be able to finish it pretty quickly. It is YA, so the writing style and stuff is easy and fast to get through, and I am definitely really enjoying it so far. So this one, as far as who inspired me to get it, like I said, I don't remember specifics, but I think it might have been a combo of Jackie from Jackie Reads and Writes, I believe, read it, and she didn't like love it, but she enjoyed it more than she thought she would, and so that made me interested. Sorry Jackie if you're watching this and that's not true at all, that's just what I'm imagining. It could have been someone else. I also think Riley Marie from the channel by the same name also read it at one point and liked it. I don't know, I feel like it was those two who just in tandem with each other ended up inspiring me to just want to get it and try it, and I'm really enjoying it so far. The writing's beautiful. I will say the dialogue is not the best written dialogue I've ever read. Like, there's something about it that's choppy and corny in a less than charming way. Like, the dialogue between characters doesn't feel natural, I guess is probably the best way to describe it. But the atmosphere, the setting, and the characterization, and just, I think the thing I'm loving most about this is the writing style and the perspective of the Greek gods. I think that's so wonderful, and it's definitely keeping me engaged in the story. So like I said, I think I'll be able to finish this quick. I'll let you know once I do finish it what my thoughts are on it, and then we'll go into an actual random choice for my next read. But I did want to mention two other books that I'm reading or about to start reading. So first of all, on audiobook, I am listening to My Darling Girl by Jennifer, I think McMahon. I think her first name's Jennifer, it could not be, but this is a thriller that was my book of the month pick this month. I wasn't really feeling any of the physical books, and I decided with book of the month, if there's a month where I don't really want any of the options, I'm probably going to try out a thriller audiobook, because I want to read more thrillers because I feel like I enjoy them, but I just don't feel like they're the type of thing I want to really spend money on if I can avoid it, just because I don't think I'll ever want to reread them. So like, I don't want the physical copies in my house. So I've thought about going to the library for them, but I just have so many books on my to be read that I haven't read that I physically own already that it's hard for me to get to the library because I know I have so much I need to get through here. So I just think audiobooks for those is going to be my best route as far as that goes. So I'm listening to that. I've only listened to a little bit of it, but it's interesting so far. I don't really know where it's going. All I know is it's about a daughter who has has a mother. We're following the daughter's perspective, and she's an adult woman with kids and everything now, but her mother is just very strange. She's an artist, I believe, and there's just a lot of baggage surrounding that, and I think her mom might be a little crazy. I don't really know. I feel like I haven't heard that much about it. What I have heard, I think, has been pretty middling, but I mean, when it comes to listening to these thrillers, I'd rather just have a decent time. I don't really need it to be like amazing necessarily all the time, so we'll see how it goes. I may end up hating it depending on what goes on, but there's that. And then of course for nonfiction November, I'm going to be starting tomorrow 6 Women of Salem, the untold stories of the accused and their accusers in the Salem witch trials by Marilynne K. Roach. I actually picked this up in Salem when I was visiting there a few months ago, and I am really excited to finally be reading it. Marilynne K. Roach, I was informed while I was there, is actually kind of the woman that they turn to when they discover something new in the town, historically significant that's new. So she's definitely a great one to read from, because she is, I would say, she's considered an expert even in Salem itself. So yes, I'm very excited to start this. I'm planning to read it throughout the month, so I'll continue checking in with you on it just as I go along. But I'm excited, like I said, and like the font is not terribly tiny, especially for a nonfiction, so I feel like it's just going to be a really great time. I'm really excited. So yes, that's where we're at to start this vlog off, and I will update you as I'll wait to update you after I finish Lovely War and have to choose my next read. All right, so it's actually surprisingly just a couple days later, and I did finish Lovely War by Julie Berry, so let's talk a little bit about it. I did really end up enjoying this. I gave it 4 stars on Goodreads, 4.25 or 4.5. I think I ended up on 4.25 on Storygraph. I loved the writing in this book, and it was so compulsively readable, so those 2 things just really made me enjoy myself. I loved the perspective of the Greek gods and goddesses, because it just added this layer of depth and meaning to everything going on, and I loved that. My favorite portions were actually those narrated by Hades. I think the way this book approached death through the lens of Hades was so beautiful and made me sob multiple times. The love stories, the characters themselves, honestly didn't make that much of an impact on me. Like, they were very much, in my mind, characters that were just filling spots to fill out this love story during the World Wars, and I feel like this story, for me at least, mostly was about exploring the themes and exploring the time period, World War I and war in general, and how it connects to love and the prejudices going on during World War I. Like, it seemed like it was a love story to those who sacrificed so much during World War I, which, especially in America, is a lesser known and understood war than World War II is. Plus, I mean, World War I just had a little bit more complexity to why it started, which I think makes it more difficult for a lot of people to understand. So I feel like this author really just wanted to explore that era of time, that particular event, and how love and death and war and even music all play a role throughout these experiences, and I just really appreciated that. So yes, really enjoyed it. It wasn't a favorite of the year necessarily, but I did love it and would definitely recommend it to other people. I'm going to keep it because I'm sure I would want to revisit it at some point. And yeah, it was just a really great time, and something I really needed was a really great time overall. So this definitely gave that to me. I also yesterday started reading 6 Women of Salem. I'm literally only 20 pages in, because that's the amount of pages I'm reading per day throughout the month that I'm reading this. It's good so far. It's kind of bullet pointy, so we're getting introductions to all 6 of the women, and it's very much treating it as a list of things that happen in these women's lives, and so it's going really fast and it's a little bit hard for me to follow at points, but I'm picking up enough that I feel like I'm getting introduced to these women and some of their early lives and stuff that we know about. The hard thing is there's so few records, and the author is really respecting the fact that there's so few records and not trying to explore too deep into these women's past beyond just these bullet point events that we know about based on the records. And so, like I said, it feels a little listy, which I don't love in a nonfiction, but it's introducing me to these women, and I'm excited to see how it goes from here. I hope it becomes a little less listy as we go along, but we'll have to see. I don't know. But since I finished Lovely War, I wanted to do a little picky... Ew, I hate that. But since I finished Lovely War, I need my next physical main read. So I'm going to pick that out of my cute little turtle mug that I have here. I just last night wanted to make these little papers with different channel names and put them in something, and this is the closest I had to me that would work. So we went with this. And like I said, I have channel names in here, and whichever channel name I pick will be associated with a book that I bought primarily due to something they said. So let's see what my next read is gonna be. I really honestly don't care. All of these sound great, so we'll see. So I have A Musical Bookworm. So Victoria is the host of this channel's name, and I am really excited about this because the one I have associated with her is The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson. Now this may be weird because it's not like she talks a lot about this book particularly, but I've started associating my desire to read more Sanderson with her just because, was it last year or a couple years ago, she did a readathon, read-along of all of The Way of Kings and lead up for the fourth one, so it must have been a couple years ago, I'm not sure. But I just remember at that point I hadn't really read much Sanderson in a bit, and something about the way she talked about it and how excited she was to continue reading The Way of Kings and stuff inspired me to really want to get back into him. Of course, clearly I haven't done all that much since that happened, and I would have bought this anyway, to be honest. Like, it's not one that I would have not got and read. I already was planning to read it, but she really prompted me to want to get back into him as soon as possible. So I'm going to read this. Some of you may be wondering, Tori, I thought you were going to read all of Sanderson's work in the order that they were published. I'm sorry, I had to scrap that goal because of Robin Hobb. Like, I just realized it was hard for me to do both, and I kind of knew it might be, but I was hoping I'd be able to overcome that. But with all the slumping that's been going on in my life and just the stage of life I'm in, I'm kind of like, anything could change at any moment as far as my amount of time I have for reading and stuff. So reading two big fantasy series right together I don't think is going to work. So I decided I'm just going to read the things I haven't read yet. I do really want to reread the Way of Kings series. I think that's my biggest desire, is to reread that. Maybe Mistborn, the original Mistborn trilogy at some point as well, but I'm okay with just getting started on getting through some of his other work. So Alloy of Law is the first book in the second Mistborn series. So we have the first trilogy, and then we have this, which I think ended up being a 4-book series. I've heard this one's okay. It's like a Western, and it's set hundreds of years after the Mistborn series, the original one. And I'm just going into it expecting fun times. Like, I think I kind of need some fantasy in my life. So I think this is perfect. It's not very long, and I expect it to just be a fun romp, and we'll get through it. I don't expect it to be a new favorite or anything, but I do expect to hopefully at least enjoy myself going through it. So yes, this will be my next read, which I'm very excited about. I'm glad too, because I think this is the shortest one on my list of possibilities right now. So that means that hopefully I'll have more time to get to even more books as time goes on. So that all being said, I'll check in with you when I have thoughts to give on The Alloy of Law. Hello everyone, it's been a while since I've updated you, but I've had some life craziness that has distracted me from reading, so I actually haven't finished The Alloy of Law. We'll get into that in a bit. But I have finished 2 things, and I wanted to talk to you about them, and then what I'm currently reading, and then also kind of mention what's been going on in my life and why I've been so all over the place. So first of all, I finished my audiobook, which was My Darling Girl by Jennifer McMahon, I believe. believe. This was a book of the month pick for me, and unfortunately I gave it 2.5 stars. It was just kind of weird, and at the beginning of the book there's a dedication to mothers who find it all too much, and so going into it I had that in my head, and I think that made it so I disliked the story even more than I otherwise would have, because I had certain expectations for potentially the symbolism that would go on, and I just feel like the symbolism was just not as great as it could have been. And I also felt like the portrayal of motherhood was very questionable in this book, and also the portrayal of mental illness was such that it's not my favorite, shall we say. I feel like it's one where mental illness is used to kind of create this sense of an uncertain ending, and I just feel like that's been overdone, and I didn't really like that. Definitely gave an unsettled feeling, so if you like thrillers that are vague in the ending and gives you that unsettled feeling, you may like this. I know a lot of people have enjoyed it, but it was just fine, and I mean, it's over now, it's whatever. It entertained me enough to keep me going through it, but like, I didn't care about any of the characters, I didn't particularly love the plot, and like I said, there was some portrayals of motherhood that I just didn't feel very comfortable with. So yeah, that's all I'll say about that. I also started and finished, since last time I talked to you, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. Now this was a reread for me. I read it first of all, of course, for the upcoming film, and also because for my podcast, my friend and I are going to be discussing this in our next episode. So I needed to make sure I was remembering things and marking things up as needed for our discussion. When I originally read this, I gave it like 3 stars. I enjoyed it, but I don't think my brain was ready for the psychological and humanity philosophy that is explored in this book. And so this time, after having just reread the original trilogy, I think I was much more prepared for what this book was doing, and I really, really liked it. So I actually gave it 5 stars on this reread. I really enjoyed it, and I'm glad I was able to come back to it. I'm so excited to see the film. I'll probably discuss my feelings on the film in this vlog, because we'll probably see it. It's Saturday now, and we'll probably see it this coming Monday before Thanksgiving, so that we can record that episode in time. But as of right now, I'm just super excited about it. I've been watching a bunch of trailers and stuff since finishing this, actually earlier today, and yeah, I'm really excited to see how they do with it, because I really like the original Hunger Games trilogy and the adaptations. I think they're some of my favorite adaptations ever, and I'm excited to see, since it's a lot of the same people working on this one, I'm excited to see how they do it. So that's what I finished. As for what I'm currently reading, first of all, Six Women of Salem. I did actually start this, and I think I'm over halfway or almost halfway through this book, and I'm enjoying it better than I was before. I think before I mentioned that it felt a little bit like a bulleted list of events. It's feeling less like that now and more like a story. It's actually made me emotional, at least at one point in this book, which I was not expecting, and I feel like my emotions toward the Salem witch trials in general are much stronger reading this book, which I think is always a good thing when you're reading a historical nonfiction, is to have more emotional connection to these events in history. And so I'm definitely feeling that. It still feels at some points a little bit like a bulleted list, and can feel a little redundant, like all the same accusations and like court documents with these women saying basically the same thing over and over, which I guess is to be expected, but it does make things a little bit dull. But that being said, overall I'm enjoying it, and it's really interesting getting to know a little bit more about the Salem witch trials than I previously knew. And of course we have Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson, which I have literally just read the prologue for, so definitely not far at all, though the prologue was very dramatic, much more dramatic and gruesome than I was expecting, so that was kind of fun. But I would really like to finish this off in the next few days. It's not very long, and usually Brandon Sanderson, it's easy for me to get to a point where I just like fly through his books, so hopefully I'll be able to do that. But I did like the prologue, and like I said, hopefully we'll get into this. I'd like to get to at least one more book for the purpose of this specific vlog with the theme, where I'm reading books recommended by booktubers that inspired me to pick it up. But we'll just have to see. I don't know. My life, like I said, is a little chaotic right now. So into what has been going on in my life. First of all, at work, it's just been crazy. We're just getting into Christmas season, and we've also got a brand new register system, which will be great once all of the glitches and everything are figured out. But right now we're all getting used to it, and you know, it's not able to do all the things we used to be able to do, and there's a lot of hiccups going on that we're trying to figure out. So it's really stressful. I'm kind of one of the main people turn to when they have questions, because I'm a supervisor and I'm also more of a tech savvy supervisor. And so I'm often the one people turn to, which I'm happy to do, and it's fine, but it does become pretty overwhelming, and I definitely have been coming home feeling very exhausted, including today. So that's been going on. The main thing though that's been going on in my life is that my grandma passed away. Sorry if the angle moved. I had to get my charger to make sure that my phone didn't die while I was recording this. But yes, my grandma has been dealing with Alzheimer's for a couple years now. About 2 months ago now, it started getting really bad all of a sudden. Like for a while, it was just kind of certain conversations you kind of could tell something was off, but it wasn't very severe. She pretty much could carry on a conversation and was present, and it was fine. But about 2 months ago, a month and a half ago-ish, she suddenly started getting just super bad, and she started to wander. And so about 2 weeks ago now, they decided to put her in a home. Finally, she was just being taken care of. I mean, everybody was pitching in. She has 10 kids, so she was getting a lot of help from them. But primarily, I mean, she was living with her husband, my grandpa, and he was taking care of her. But because she started to wander, it was just becoming a lot harder for both of them and more dangerous for her especially. So we put her in a home, and that was like I said, 2 weeks ago now. And about a week after we put her in the home, she fell and ended up falling into an unconscious state and just was not responding for a couple days. She wasn't eating very much. It was just very much we knew she was going to pass at any time, and then she did about 3 days ago. I think it's Saturday now, and she passed away, I believe, early Wednesday morning. So yeah, that's been taking up, it's been a little bit strange because I've seen it coming for a long time for obvious reasons. Like, she had Alzheimer's and was sick, and honestly a lot of us wanted her to pass just so she could be relieved of that suffering, and so my grandpa could as well. My grandpa could stop worrying. But she's the first grandparent I've lost, and I really haven't experienced that much death in my family, including like my extended family. Like, I've had great grandparents die, and I had one cousin pass when he was 2 years old from medical complications. And that was when I don't even know how old. I was probably like between 8 and 10 when he passed. So it was really sad, but I was still really young myself and didn't completely understand everything and didn't have that super strong connection with him. He was also only 2, and so it was super sad because he was 2, but it wasn't like I had this personal connection with him the same way his immediate family did. And so this is probably the closest loved one I've had pass, and which is amazing with having as big of an extended family as I have. With my dad, like I said, he's one of 10 and my mom's one of 8, so, and they're all pretty much married with their own kids. So big extended family that I'm actually pretty close with, and this is really the first loss that we've had that has really impacted me. And so while it was expected and I haven't been like a distraught mess, I definitely have had some moments of just feeling a little strange and just not being able to focus very well because of it and stuff. And so yeah, it's impacted my reading. But like I said, I finished those 2, and I actually have finished both of those books within the past couple of days. I've just finally kind of been able to wake up. I think since my grandma has passed now, and I did the other night kind of let myself have a grieving period, and I'm sure I'll have a little bit more of that during the funeral in a couple days. That's kind of put me back in a headspace where I feel like I can read and focus on that stuff, and it's been good, and I hopefully will be able to continue that. So yeah, it's been a weird couple months. I mean, my last vlog I was talking about my appendix being removed, and now my grandma passed away. So I don't know what's going on in my life, but a lot of things apparently. So Anyway, all that to say, that's where I'm at with reading, and hopefully, like I said, I'll be able to get through Alloy of Law soon, and I think that will be my next clip. We'll be just talking about Alloy of Law, most likely once I've finished it, just to avoid this vlog being terribly long. But if I get partway through it and I'm like, I need to talk about this, then I will do that as well, because sometimes that is something that happens. So hopefully that won't take terribly long. Hey guys, so it is time officially to conclude this vlog. I was originally going to do 3 books, not just 2 for this particular theme, but unfortunately, as you already know, based on what you would have already seen, November was chaos again for me. So I'm just going to stick with these 2. It is already December 6th, and last night I did finish The Alloy of Law by Brandon Sanderson, and I gave it 4.5 stars. I really enjoyed this a lot, actually. I did go into it knowing it was a little bit more of a fun project for Brandon Sanderson, and I definitely felt that. Although I did like the Easter eggs and references back to the original Mistborn trilogy, although I realized there are some things I had forgotten. I felt like I remembered enough that it would be fine, and I would say overall it was. But there's one character who appears at the end of this book in the epilogue that I completely forgot everything about that person. So I think before I continue with the series, I'm actually going to listen to the audiobooks for the original trilogy just to make sure that I have all of the information a lot more present for me before I continue on. But I did order the rest of the series from Blackwell so I could get it in these matching UK editions. So those are coming in the mail, and I'm so excited because, man, Brandon Sanderson's one, I did this last year too with Elantris, where I just forget how much I enjoy reading his books, and like I don't know why I don't think about it. I guess I just sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't know if I'm in the mood for that kind of story, but I always am like super happy to be in his world and just enjoy myself. So I've only really read Cosmere books. I've never read any of his other series outside of Cosmere. So if there's one in particular you think I'd like, let me know. I've had an interest in Steelheart in the past. Skyward I've heard good things about. I don't know if I necessarily read any of them, but if there's one that you like really feel like I'd like, please let me know and I might check it out at some point. I don't know. I still have a good amount of Cosmere to read between the rest of this series, and then I haven't read Rhythm of War, and I think the 5th one, the 5th Stormlight Archive, is supposed to come out next year. I haven't read all of the short stories and novellas involved. I've read a couple, but not all of them. And I haven't read any of the secret projects this year. So I definitely have some Sanderson I need to get through just within the Cosmere. But again, if you know of one series that you feel like I'd really like. But anyway, some detail on what I liked about this book. I would say my favorite things in this book, first of all, I really liked Marcy as a character. I know some people find her bland or whatever, but I really liked her. I feel like it would have been really easy for Brandon Sanderson to create a character just like Vin, but he didn't. He created a woman who I still see as strong, but just in a very different way, and I really like that. I feel like Sanderson does a great job of creating very unique and different women in all of his books, and I've really enjoyed that. I think he kind of leans a little bit more towards having scholarly women in his books, I would say that for sure, but there's definitely some more warrior types and stuff as well. So I think he does a really good job, especially for a male fantasy writer. I think he does a great job with characterizing various types of women. I'm not a huge Western kind of person, but I feel like this had enough similarities as far as like urban setting and stuff to the original trilogy that I felt like I was able to enjoy it a little bit better. And I think that because I enjoyed the Victorian era a lot, like the 19th century a lot anyway, even though this is maybe a part of the world that I'm less interested in as far as that time period goes, I feel like it still is reflecting on things about the Victorian era that are interesting to me, and so I feel like I probably was able to get into this a little bit better than I originally expected to. I do like Wax and Wayne and their banter and stuff. I will say there was definitely some bits of dialogue that was meant to be humorous that I felt like was just not quite within my humor range, but I did laugh a few times during this. And like I said, overall, it was a good time. I'm glad I read it, and it did make me want to make sure. I was originally going to reread the original Mistborn trilogy anyway, but it's just long. I wanted to physically read it, and it was it's just long, and I was like, oh, well, whatever, I'll just read this. I don't really want to worry too much about it. But after reading this, I'm like, no, I think I need to revisit the original trilogy, but I think, like I said, I'll probably do audiobook for it. Now I can't remember if I told you that I finished Six Women of Salem, but if I didn't, here are my thoughts on it. I did finish Six Women of Salem by the end of the month. I gave it like 3.5 stars. It was good. I just felt like the title promised to focus on 6 women of Salem, and while it did in the beginning and at the end, and then throughout there were like fictional sections where it focused just on those 6 women, it didn't really do that for the whole book. Like, the rest of the book was exploring the whole timeline of the Salem witch trials, which was fine and very immersive for me. I've never really studied the Salem witch trials at that depth, so I really liked it. It made me emotional at one point and made me really angry throughout, more angry than I've ever been with the Salem witch trials, and so I really enjoyed the experience. I just think that it wasn't what the title promised, which I think would be really frustrating, especially if you know a lot about the Salem witch trials and you're wanting to get more specific details on these 6 figures, then you may end up being disappointed. So I didn't really love that aspect of it. I also felt like when it was exploring the trials themselves, there was a very bullet pointy kind of feel about it. Like, it just felt like it was going through, oh, this happened, this happened, this happened, this legal thing, this legal thing, this legal thing. It kind of eased out of that towards the end, but I think part of that was because there was a lot more sources she was able to use for things going on in the latter half, and there was a lot more personal drama that had sources in the latter half, whereas the first half it was a lot more just trial notes. That's really all we have, and other legal things even before the witch trials themselves, of just legal events going on, because obviously these women would have been lost to history if it wasn't for the witch trials themselves. So pre-witch trials, they weren't being necessarily paid attention to all that much. A couple of them couldn't write or read, and so they weren't going to be keeping journals or anything like that. So it makes sense as far as she has very limited source material, but it wasn't very fun to read. It was kind of boring at some points, especially in the beginning. So overall, a very interesting read. I think if you're interested in the Salem witch trials and you want more of a very specific timeline about things, this is a great one to read. But if you know a lot about the Salem witch trials, I don't know that this is the best one to pick up. And that is it for my reading for this vlog. So I'm going to close this out here. Let me know if you've read any of the books I've mentioned, as I would love to know. Also, of course, your thoughts on them. Thank you again so much for watching, and I will see you next time. Bye!